Hey YouTube, league turnover today. It is Great League, Ultra League, Match League. So I put out a top Great League teams this video this morning, so go check that out. Looking at Ultra League teams here, some of mine, some from other content creators. So two things before I actually go through the teams. The first one I want to do is just be aware that it is a Go Battle week. So from today, January 19th through Wednesday, you get to do up to 50 battles. So instead of 5 sets, you do 10 sets. So good time to grind and a good time to get dust because it is 4 times dust. So be sure to take advantage of that. The second thing I want to talk about before we get into top teams is the drop of a potential new Pokemon in. Let's actually look at the rankings. It's not on the rankings list yet, but we're going to talk about Annihilape in a second here. But if we actually just quickly look at the Great League Ultra League rankings, not much has changed, right? Red Steel Giratina have always been at the top. Poliwrath with the Skull buff has become one of the best save swaps in this meta. Again, Cress is up there. And then, for the most part, it's most of the same meta that you've always seen, right? Tapu Fini, Virizion, Cobalion, Swampert, like Talonflame with the Incinerate buff. Neither are not new. Some new ones up here with this season with Stealing Skarmory buff. Lantern with the Spark is up there. Tentacruel with the Scald buff. But for the most part, and Skeldurge with Incinerate buff. For the most part, it is more or less the same meta. Annihilape has been announced, and some of its moves have been put in. So Annihilape is a fighting ghost Pokemon. It's the evolution of Primeape. So in the Ultra League, if it eventually gets here, 0, 15, 15 for 28.5. So it's still a very low level Pokemon compared to a lot of these level 50 Pokemon. So you're going to have some problems there. But the moveset is kind of nice, right? You have Counter, Close Combat, and Night Slash is the PVPoke recommended moveset. There is also Shadow Ball has been at least farmed by the Pokeminers. So you can also either run Close Combat Shadow Ball, or you can run for more of a bait move in Night Slash, which still gives you the coverage there for like ghosts. So when I put it in the open Ultra League analysis, just to see like what it could potentially look like, 18-20 record. Not surprising. A lot of your wins come against just Pokemon weak to counter, right? Still expelling all these Pokemon weak to counter, or Pokemon that like their fast mover is resisted by Ghost or something like. So Poliwrath, which is generally really good, counter is resisted, so you kind of do all right there. And then you have just just general niche matchups like Amok, Poison Jab's resisted because of the Ghost, so stuff like that. So some good wins, some okay just mid battles here against Prince and stuff like that. Some hard losses, and a lot of these hard losses are against, again, fairies, flyers, some of those obvious ones that you'll just lose there. Ghosts, because you're also weak to ghosts, so you're just going to get sort of outpaced in both in most of these situations here, and the Night Slash isn't going to catch up enough to what is going to be an issue. So if you are going to use this Pokemon, I just put in a team just to give you an idea. Because if you look at Annihilape's just down there, like again, beating the counter, like anything that's weak to counter, you're doing very well against. But a lot of just like your glassy. So put in sort of 2 bulkier Pokemon, Registeel, Pidgeot, and 2 Pokemon that can cover your sort of like Pidgeot will cover your ghost weakness, and Registeel will cover your like flying weakness. And essentially those two can combo down the board there. So something like that is how you would run Annihilape when it comes out. But we're not talking about Annihilape today. We're talking about some already tested Ultra League teams. And some of these are from me. Some of these, like this one, is Home Slice. So I pulled 4, Home Slice, Rise, Yonkis, and Tho. So those are the first 4 teams coming up, maybe not in that order. And then the remainder are my teams that I've used in the past. So I've used this. I've seen this one, and I want to use Tentacruel. I think Tentacruel is kind of snuck up, as you saw it ranks like number 25. I think it's really, really, really strong in the Ultra League. Obviously, the Scald buff is huge. Blizzard for your like Giratina and stuff that is nice coverage here. So the 2 really nice hard-hitting moves. Poison Jab can obviously add up. I think steals are your biggest weakness to a certain extent. So you have, this is an ABB style team, right? You're going to save swap Greedent to draw out a counter user. And Greedent's super just spammy and bulky, so you're just going to mud shot, body slam, probably the crap out of the counter user. And then punish it with your Tentacruel, and then your Guzzlord roams free in the back. When I said Steel's an issue, it sort of is, but Scald is neutral on most Steels. I don't know about Steel Water, but Scald is neutral on most Steels, so you'll be able to chip and work your way around through all of that with Tentacruel. This one looks like it's Rise, so Galvantula, Jellicent, and Scrafty. So Galvantula, I've used Galvantula so many times in the Ultra League, and every single time I'm like, I hate this Pokemon. It does have some play. It does have a decent amount of play, especially with all these waters popping up, right? I just talked about Tentacruel. I talked about Poliwrath. So there's a lot of things that it does well against. The problem is, like, Electric and Bug, you just get walled by a decent amount of things, and one of them being Giratina, which is everywhere. And then you have nothing for, like, Galarian Stunfisk. So there's a lot just that ground steel. So there's a lot of things that it just has problems with. So you need to cover both those weaknesses. And I think Jellicent and Scrafty are two good coverages for that. I think Jellicent, both are bulky. Both can kind of deal with what I mentioned, like Galarian Stunfisk. And then Scrafty will deal with most steels in general. And then Jellicent's just like bulky, good safe swap. And both can kind of deal with Giratina, right? Hex Shadow Ball versus the Foul Play. So both can kind of deal with Giratina. So if you're gonna run Galvantula, make sure you have two answers in the back for Giratina. So that's why that team makes sense. This one I think is Yunkus. Again, sort of ABB style, not truly, because Pidgeot is half flying, so you neutralize it fighting. But you have Skeledirge, Greedent, and Pidgeot, and I was gonna say it's more just a balanced team with Greedent as a safe swap, but like it's not. It is to a certain extent, because your two main weaknesses that you're gonna have to deal with a lot, 3 weaknesses, but the 2 that you're gonna have to deal with a lot are gonna be sort of Ghost. You have a lot of weaknesses with Skeledirge, but a Ghost and Ground are 2 of them. So Pidgeot will deal with that. So it could just be like bounce like that. That being said, it's also weak to. You add a double rock weakness with this. You add something like just like a water will cause you problems. Just like a Swampert on the front end will cause you problems, stuff like that. But if you use Skeledirge, you'll know that like even in bad matchups, you get to those Shadow Balls and Disarming Voice is pretty quick, especially with the Incinerate buff, so that you're able to chip a bunch there. And then this one's probably Thos, the Shadow Dragonite double fairy team. Dragonite, I think I'll have Dragon. Yeah, for sure I'll have Dragonite on one of my teams. I think Dragonite, and it's funny because he said Dragonite is the best. The title of his video was Dragonite is the best lead in Ultra League. And in my Dragonite videos, I always say Dragonite is the best lead in Ultra League because it is so strong in just majority of neutral matchups. And if you just get hit with like a fairy or an ice, you know to immediately leave. But outside of those, like you do well against any sort of neutral matchup, and then steals which resist your Dragon Breath, you still have super power force, so you can do that in Bail. Galarian Weezing and Tapu Fini can kind of both act as safe swaps, quite honestly. I think Galarian Weezing is probably safer overall, just because you have that Brutal Swing Overheat, which really provides you a lot of coverage for most things. If you're using that moveset, I guess the worst thing you're going to see is like a Greninja, where you only have resisted moves, but the Fairy Winds are super effective. So I'd be kind of surprised if a Greninja instant swaps into this, not knowing its moveset. So Galarian Weezing, probably the safe swap, and then Tapu Fini is just one of the better overall Pokemon in this meta. Again, decent bulk, Water Gun, Surf combo, plus a Moonblast for coverage. And now we're getting to mine. Dragonite is best lead. Dragonite, Jellicent, Swampert. Again, every time we do these top teams, but these top teams are generally for newer people. I hit Legend like 8 seasons ago at this point with a Pidgeot, Jellicent, Swampert. This was when Trevenant was really around, that you try and draw out a Grass or Trevenant with your Jellicent, and then lose, and then Pidgeot would punish, and then your Swampert would roam free. Same idea. I just think that Dragonite has way more play in this meta than Pidgeot right now, just having that superpower for the steals. So that is why I used it. Plus, as a dragon, you neutralize electric, which again, we saw Galvantula, so neutralize that electric there. That Steelix, this was this season. I used Steelix, and the analysis of Steelix in my video was basically, are you feeling lucky? Because it really comes down to, you're supposed to have a 50% chance of hitting Breaking Swipe. If you hit Breaking Swipe 50% of the time, it's actually still a decent Pokemon, because you have overall good typing, good bulk, Dragon Tail still chips, and Breaking Swipe is still just like a Dragon Claw, right? Just with the chance of lowering your opponent's attack. So if you get it 50% of the time, you're okay. If you get it more than 50% of the time, you're looking great. It's going to be as strong as it was last season. If you RPS and get the unlucky not getting the Breaking Swipe, you really feel how much worse it is. So it is kind of like roll the dice. Weak to ground, weak to water. So Cresselia and Virizion dealing with that in the back, comboing both of those there. Cresselia very, very bulky in the back, and then Virizion just more harder hitting with its double kick, Sacred Sword, Leaf Blade moveset. I'm probably going to get into a couple balance teams here. Swampert, Charizard, Core with a Giratina safe swap. This is just very, very straightforward. Swampert weak to grass. Charizard covers that weakness. Giratina safe swap. Some of these types of teams I find the best, quite honestly, especially if you're newer. A lot of the other teams that I showcase from the other content creators have some aspect of, you need to get out to draw this Pokemon out. So like, they're not true ABB style teams, but they're like kind of like, you kind of need to make the swaps. You absorb on this Pokemon, you do that. This one's very straightforward. If you don't see, like, there's kind of like the worst thing you see is like grass, which you're weak to. The other sort of things is like dragons can be a little bit of an issue, because you really don't have much to throw at. You can't throw Hydro at a dragon. And if it's a flying dragon like Dragonite, right, you don't have anything to throw. And then Giratina is not a great matchup there either. So those are the toughest ones. But any sort of neutral matchup or good matchup, Swampert is just like great to stay in with and great to dominate with. And then worst case scenario, Giratina to absorb energy. Like with this team, and you're going to see, I'll talk about it probably in the video, I'm rarely ever using Giratina, like shields on Giratina. Unless it's like a true win condition that I see, I'm not using shields on Giratina. I'm using shields on my Shadow Swampert and Shadow Charizard, because both of those chip like crazy. Even in bad matchups, like if you've done the Charizard versus like a water, like Blast Burn still does like 50%, right? It's just such a hard hitting Pokemon. So basically, use those two shields on those two Pokemon, Giratina to absorb as a safe swap, and just absorb damage, and you should be fine there. And this is exact same idea. Dragonite, Cresselia, Swampert. It's not a true covering your moves, because Swampert, like Dragonite's one of its main weaknesses is you're double weak to ice, and Swampert really isn't an answer to ice. But again, Dragonite will cover the grass weakness of Swampert, Crest, safe swap. This does have Moonblast on it. I think in the Ultra League, I know the Great League has the recommended moveset of Future Sight now. Is that the same in Ultra League? I feel like in Ultra League you might want to run the Moonblast because of all the Giratinas. Yes, Crest's recommended moveset is Moonblast, and I think that's probably the case with all the Giratinas running around and Dragonite, stuff like that. You probably want that Moonblast, and Darks, right? So I think there's enough of those Pokemon in Ultra League that you probably want to run Moonblast, as opposed to Great League, where there's a lot less of those, that you can get away with harder hitting Future Sight, as opposed to the coverage move. Lurantis, Jellicent, Walrein. Again, I already kind of talked about Jellicent, how I think it's like just a great safe swap, bulky, hard hitting, spammy. The Lurantis Walrein, man, Walrein, if you played for like 4 or 5 seasons ago before the nerf, Walrein was like on 80% of teams. It was just so spammy, so bulky, and just such a strong Pokemon. I still think it has play. It definitely is a bit worse now, and I think like when you think about water Pokemon, it's probably not even like, the problem is it's in water or ice. But if you're thinking about an ice Pokemon, you may be thinking about like a Ninetales as your like ice charmer, and then if you think about water, you're thinking about Jellicent, you're thinking about Poliwrath at this point, or even like Lantern. You're not truly thinking about Walrein. I still think Walrein has a lot of play though, so definitely one to check out. Bulky, good coverage. And Lurantis is again a super fun one that you would be like, wow, I kind of see like it has probably a little more play than like Togedemaru and stuff like that. Like I like to use, but it's one of those that's just like you can just get like walled, like super power leaf blade, Giratina. You have absolutely nothing to throw. But then there's ones where it's just like a neutral to good matchup, and how hard this hits and how fast it gets to these moves is insane. Like I remember one battle, like go watch this video if you haven't checked it out yet. Like I remember one battle where I was at like 2.5 leaf blades / superpowers in a second, and it's just like you're just and in neutral to good situations, you're just like bam, 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 and this your Pokemon just like your other opponent's just like, oh crap, I don't have anything to answer this. So it can be really overpowering at times, but it can just get walled as well. I think this was, if it says NA, this was definitely a viewer submitted battle, but it's the same concept. It's sort of ABB. It's a Sandslash, Charizard, Jellicent. It's not a true ABB in the fact that you have the same. You're double E to electric in the back. It's not like Sandslash is an answer to electric, but you're really covering your fighter weakness in the back. You're covering your fighter weakness with a ghost and a flyer in the back. So that's the main thing. But again, it doesn't truly cover like the electric weakness. But overall, they cover each other's weakness, right? Because you're like, Jellicent's gonna have problems with like ghosts and darks, and like Charizard and Sandslash can combo those, and Sandslash will have problems with counter users, the backline of counter that, and Charizard will have problems with water, and Jellicent deals with that. So it kind of do cover each other's weaknesses, but just not like a pure go into this. And that is it. Those are the 10 teams. So those are 10 teams. Great League, Ultra League, Master League on, 4 times Dust, 50 battles. Let me know in the comments below what you're playing. I'll probably stick to Great League for the most part. Maybe I'll go into Ultra League a bit, but I feel like Great League for the most part, we're close. We're at like the 28, 60, 70 range when I'm shooting this, so we're close to Legend. Hopefully we get there this week. Anyways, that is it. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.